All right, let's go. Welcome Inside the Numbers, folks, with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right. Oh, man, there's so much to go over. Tomorrow, do not forget, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, because Kentucky's going to close right away. Locals, you have the polls open and close times. Um, we'll probably get results from Kentucky pretty quickly, actually. But then it's going to roll right into other states and other contests. We'll get Virginia, of course. We'll have Mississippi. Well, there's really not a whole lot to talk about there. I think we know what the expected result is. I think the shocker or the big news, of course, will be Virginia, especially if you live in Virginia, you care about how the battle for the legislature is going there. Anything beyond a 50-50 split in the lower chamber, anything beyond as far as Republican performance. And I think you got to give Democrats at least a slight edge to hold the state Senate. But it is so close that I don't think you can make that confident a prediction. I'm looking at the early vote in all of these states, and even in some of the bluer leaning districts in the state level and in the House of Delegates, birds, whatever. The areas that are more Republican are actually voting disproportionately higher in the early vote. It doesn't look good for Democrats. It looks, frankly, slightly worse than it did in 21. As far as Kentucky goes, we have our estimates for, and you'll see that tomorrow. Estimated votes will at least tell you what they are. Low end, mid range. I was showing this to the Locals Book Club yesterday. A lot of cool stuff we haven't had in the past. What are the outstanding votes? What is the difference in election day votes? All of the early votes together. Take Kentucky, for instance. How far ahead was Beshear in the early vote versus the election day vote that he's trailing? We have a lot more information that we'll be able to share. And Kentucky's another one. I just don't see a strong Democratic performance. Virginia's tough because you have to infer party affiliation, and how that's done through these machine learning models, whether you're looking at L2 or our own, is vote history. For instance, have they voted in primaries in the past? If so, which ones? That appear to be Democratic patterns now. Maybe they were Republicans in the past, or maybe they've always been Republican, vice versa. There is crossover in a place like Kentucky. That's going to matter a lot, what the crossover vote may be. Cameron is not going to win as many Democrats as Beshear is going to win Republicans. That being said, the independent vote so far early is very, very small. And Beshear only has about a 10-point partisan edge in early voting. It's not a lot at all. So if Republicans make a modest go of it, and Cameron is leading with independents, and Republicans come out in some pretty decent force on election day, 1.5, 1.6, that'd be tough. It'd be really tough for Beshear to hold on. And we went over some of those counties last week. We're going to know pretty early how the margins are looking. So again, 6 p.m., don't miss it. Virginia just doesn't look great. It's just that even in some of the lower turnout elections, Youngkin did well in some of the Chesterfield areas. We have a whole list of other, districts we wanted to talk about, but he did well in them because turnout was so damn high for an off-cycle general election in 21. Talking about 4 million votes. It's a lot of votes. You miss from 1.2 or something between that and the presidency. It was a big turnout. The higher the turnout, the better it is for Republicans at this point, and people need to remember that. Democrats do a better job getting the vote out. You can see Scott Pressler lamenting on Twitter just earlier about Republicans still being plagued by these people who say vote on election day. Logistically, it's stupid. It's extremely stupid to leave your election day vote. People aren't around. Georgia continues to run into this problem. It's been proven over and over again with various studies. These runoff dates that they hold in Georgia are they do not favor Republicans because so many Republican voters leave the Peach State in that time period, and yet they do it anyway. So if you're not going to vote early, make sure your absentee ballot's in or whatever it may be, then you can have a hell of a problem. And that's what they're running into. So higher turnout will tend to favor Republicans in these races. All right. But anything beyond Democrats holding a slight majority in the upper chamber and like a tie in the lower chamber, which we were looking at before, is probably the most likely scenario if you're being conservative. Anything beyond that in Republican performance would be an overperformance. All right. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I went on War Room earlier this morning. I want to play a clip because I think that for those of you who didn't see it, I know some of you didn't. You told me you were going to be out and about doing other things, watching, and I totally understand. Watching this manifesto coverage from Steven Crowler. I told you guys that the FBI is beyond a not credible organization. All right. That anytime there's a motive that is not favorable to the left with mass shootings or any other plots, you won't hear about it unless someone leaks it to somebody like Steven Crowder. That we still don't know what was behind Vegas, although I think we all know, right? But all of these years later, that's the official narrative. The FBI will tell you there's no instance of voter fraud in 2020 when they had just indicted a former congressman for running a multi-year scheme across multiple wards in Philadelphia, which bribed election officials, election judges, for crying out loud, right? We just saw what happened in Hartford. But, the FBI will sit there with a straight face and tell you there's no evidence of it. You'll see emails back to Mark Meadows like, move on. There's nothing here. We've never seen anything like that before, even though they just indicted somebody, a former Democrat. And by the way, that was going back to, I want to say, at least 2014. It was every site. It could be more. Honestly, I just pulled it up the other day, pulled it out of the archives to show what's his name on from Arizona, who continuously says that stuff just doesn't happen. No, it does happen. And anyone who's from my neck of the woods, which we talked about in the Locals Club book club yesterday, we just look at the rest of you as stupid. Academics. It's like academia and the silver spoon. You don't come from the neighborhoods we come from. You don't know what goes on there. You don't know that it's easy to give somebody a Lucy Newport to stuff a ballot box with their vote. I mean, you're so stupid. I mean, you either fell off the turnip truck yesterday, or you're just a friggin' liar. Of course it happens. The only question ever is whether or not it happens to the extent that it causes the outcome of an election to change. Meanwhile, Republicans, another part of what I'm trying to get to here with this is, Scott Pressler's going on and on, abandoned about that, but you can't ever stop people from exploiting the system. That's what human beings do. All right. For power, human beings kill. You think they won't stuff a ballot box? It's just naive to think so. The only thing you can do is try to beat it. You cannot stop it, but you can beat it. And you can beat it with basically overwhelming participation, because the more you participate and the more you have known chain of custody for your votes that get through the system correctly, the less they have to exploit, the less low-hanging fruit is out there for them to do what they do with it. So anyway, moving on. But these numbers that we're looking at that came out over the weekend, we're going to go over some of the Haley numbers versus the Haley numbers, the DeSantis number. Let me just say this right off the bat before I even show the chart. Haley's numbers are not real. They're not real. It's very reminiscent of Pete Buttigieg in like 2019 as a hypothetical, and very reminiscent of Mitt Romney, even some of Jeb Bush's numbers going back that far back. John McCain also polled very strongly when he wasn't well known, even though he was a sitting U.S. senator. But Haley is a governor from South Carolina that hasn't been in office very long, hasn't been in office for a long time, and did nothing but be the ambassador to the UN for Donald Trump. There is zero chance Nikki Haley is going to win the state of Michigan. There is zero chance that Nikki Haley is going to win the state of Pennsylvania. At this point, candidates like that would have a hard time holding on to Iowa and Ohio. All right. And we just pulled Florida not long ago. Donald Trump was running 7 points ahead of the sitting governor for a reason. Nikki Haley would probably lose the state of Florida. And I'm going to show you, those are generic numbers. They're just reflecting dissatisfaction with Biden. But once people get to know her better, the way they got to know Ron DeSantis better, right, who also enjoyed. That's why he started, and his team started making the electability argument, because he was enjoying more favorable numbers when he was a lot lesser known. And he always was a more high profile governor than Nikki Haley ever was. So he started out with a little bit higher. But once voters got to know him, all right, and Nikki Haley could be, so you could say Nikki Haley's a better personal candidate than Ron DeSantis. You can say that, but her policies are deeply unpopular. And the minute people start to, they're upset the world is burning. Look at the CBS News poll. They're upset the world is burning. Feel stupid that they thought Donald Trump was the least stabilizing force out of the choice between him and Biden, and have extreme voters remorse. So much so that Trump is exceeding the 50% mark now in multiple polls, which he never did in 16 and he never did in 2020. The matchups between Biden and Trump are more real because these men are both known quantities. The minute everyone realizes that Nikki Haley wants a war in Eastern Europe, that Nikki Haley wants a war in the Middle East, that Nikki Haley is cushy on this and squishy on that, she will collapse like Ron DeSantis collapsed. And I'm going to show you the difference. It's not just the margin, it's the levels of support. You'll see Biden's level fall because nobody knows who the hell she is. Well, it's a woman. She's a Republican. I guess I don't really know who she is. Let me check the box there. Not to mention the number of people that just simply wouldn't show up because they're never going to vote for Nikki Haley, particularly Trump voters. All right. All right. So let me play this, though, because the media knows this. They know this. It's like I sometimes feel like it's a little bit annoying at times, but I sometimes feel like there are just too many people on social media that think they're smarter than they are and think they're experts, and I have to go back to like elementary and rudimentary shit and explain it over and over and over again because so many people push the same nonsense and BS over and over again. But make no mistake, Nate Cohen at the New York Times knows that what I'm saying is true. The Meltdown panel on MSNBC this morning, they know it's true. Joe Biden and the people who surround him know it's true. In 2012, I remember Barack Obama doing the same thing. Oh, Mitt Romney looks strong. He's got a 10-point lead in Wisconsin. You know what? We really don't want to run against Mitt Romney. That's who we don't want to run against. He won in Massachusetts as a governor. That's another thing I constantly have to say. It's a perfect example. Gubernatorial elections have no predictive value for presidential vote preference. See the book in the corner of the screen right now? There's a reason he left them out of his analysis. And so does everybody else, because they don't matter. Larry Hogan would never be able to win the state of Maryland as the Republican nominee for president. Mitt Romney would never be able to win the state of Massachusetts as the Republican nominee for president. In fact, Barack Obama slaughtered him there. Phil Bredesen was a great popular governor, Democratic governor, the state of Tennessee, but he would get his ass kicked as the Democratic nominee for president in that state. Marsha Blackburn stomped a hole in his head in 2018, figuratively speaking. And the list just goes on and on. Baker could not win Massachusetts. There have been Republican governors in Connecticut and in Vermont. Are we seriously arguing that if that person was the Republican nominee, he could win the state of Vermont at the presidential level? And it goes to this concept with what's going on with Iowa, with Kim Reynolds. She is the most unpopular governor in the country right now, according to Morning Consult. Her favorability and approval ratings took a dive the minute she began to publicly appear with Ron DeSantis. I kid you not, go look at it. The Emerson poll is even worse because she's very negative in the Emerson poll. And because the prior Emerson poll, which had Trump even higher, it showed him slip in Iowa a little bit, but only a few points. He had shot up to like 60 or something at one point. It was crazy. It was way too high in my book. But in that poll, Kim Reynolds had been popular, at least a little bit. And then she completely tanked. And now she's underwater. Why? Because she started to appear in public. Why is Ron DeSantis running 7 points weaker in his own state, where he's the sitting governor right now, than Donald Trump is against Joe Biden? To the point where it's basically a tie, a statistical tie. And Trump is running way ahead. It's the same reason Trump is almost 40 points ahead of him in his own damn state. Because gubernatorial votes mean nothing when it comes to presidential vote preference. The partisan voting index is a lot less rigid. People break from their party a lot. They do not do it at the senatorial, but especially at the presidential level. All right? But they know this is true. And that would be why the system wants to throw him in jail. Because look at the question the New York Times poll clung to. It's important to remember the swing we're talking about here. The numbers that the New York Times found when they asked the question, but what if he is convicted of a felony, are basically the numbers they had Joe Biden leading by in those states going into 2020. So the fact that Trump is handily ahead in some of these states, asking that question, there's a big debate right now with pollsters. It's not clear that that's a valid thing to do. Voters are going to know what you want them to say. They're not going to want to tell a pollster that they are voting for a person who's got a felony instead of the guy that is destroying their life. They don't want to tell the pollster, yeah, all right, so they charged him with something. And by the way, the documents case doesn't even look like it's going to be heard. The Florida case does not look like it appears it's going to be heard. And Chuckin already got smacked by the D.C. Court of Appeals, so we'll see where that one goes. We'll just have to see. But voters know what you want them to say when you ask a question like that. If you ask, what if Joe Biden took bribes from China, then what are you going to do? You would get similar drop-offs in vote, but at the end of the day, those voters are going to vote for Joe Biden. And you're going to return to their partisan index. We don't have presidential elections where 25% of Democrats vote for the Republican, 25% of Republicans vote for the Democrat. And we won't for a long time, probably. All right, but let's listen to this, and I'm going to pop in and out, and I'm going to stop and make some commentary along the way. All right? Because this is something they're just not really getting. There's a couple of things they're not getting here. And especially if the economy sours, unlike Larry Sabato's prediction made, and I don't know what he's talking about, by the way. A lot of people are worried about the economy next year. If the economy further sours, I don't know, whether or not they're going to be able to cling to these, because I think a lot of people already have it baked into the cake that he's going to get some kind of a conviction, or at the very least, it'll be appealed and it won't be on his record yet. So people don't understand how the law works here. He's not going to jail, folks. All right. He's not going to jail. Is Secret Service going to sit in the cell next to him? It's ridiculous. So the question on its face is kind of stupid and ridiculous. And they know that, which is why they're having an utter meltdown. Let's play some of it. And by the way, we got Devin Nunes coming up. He's such a great guest to have on this because it's beyond whether Donald Trump can win or not. And by the way, I told you also. Now it's even the New York Times. Black vote share, Hispanic vote share, and one more, younger voters. I remember the first poll we did this year, Barnes and I did a what are the odds. We talked about what could be behind this. Generation Xers to millennials to Generation Z, what could be driving this? And we got into a deep, deep cultural discussion about life experience of these generations and where they're at right now. And we had pollsters being paid by other campaigns calling me, Mark Penn over at Harvard, garbage, trash, it's a mirage. Well, now it's the New York Times. So take it and stick it up your ass, because I was right.
Have been personally hurt by the current president's policies compared to 35% who have been helped. We'll talk about that. On the flip side, 51% of those same voters say Trump's policies have helped them, while 34% say the opposite. And this...
Actually, let's just pause that and we'll talk about it right now. How about that? This is what goes to what I've been saying. They think Donald Trump is a better president. They think their lives were better under Donald Trump. Joe Biden and Democrats promised to smooth the seas, to calm the seas, to shut down the virus, not the economy, to stabilize the world and make our alliances with NATO strong again so nobody would challenge us and prevent nuclear holocaust. So when Devin comes on, what we're going to talk about is the lengths. Few people know better than Devin Nunes, former congressman. Obviously, we're talking about the head of the Intelligence Committee, what these people are capable of. All right, let's keep going.
Is the reason our phones were exploding yesterday.
Your friends are calling them.
Really freaked out and upset. And it does beg the question,
that is
if
used
there are
incorrectly
Democrats
all the
out
time.
there
You can
who
just-
are concerned, or even moderate Republicans, about the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump,
right?
I think the real concern here is disinformation, the electorate being poisoned. I mean, it's not like the contrast between these two are Republican and Democrat and conservative.
Like poisoning somebody to the point that he thinks the current sitting president is a traitor to the country who is an agent of Vladimir Putin. So he loads up his vans with semi-automatic rifles and semi-automatic handguns and opens fire on Republicans practicing for a charity baseball game. That kind of poisoning
versus liberal policies. Right. It's not, I mean, President Biden has accomplished a lot in his presidency, and there are those who would say it's even historic. And then you have a guy.
Okay, see, this is just living in delusion, and I'm stopping him because I want you to understand they can live in this delusion all they want. But the fact of the matter is, when people are asked who did a better job in this area, who would still do a better job in this area? Who do you trust more to do this and, be a steward of the economy? Who do you trust more to take care of inflation? Who do you trust more to stop the constant wars? This is the problem they're going to have now. So they can continue with this grift, and it is a grift. All right. So they're mad at people like them because people like them, and many of them were convinced by people like them of lies. Things that are lies. And those who weren't fully brainwashed and have now snapped out of it because reality is coming to fruition, they're getting hit with the cold, hard truth. They're living it. They're going to be angry at these people because, believe me, while they're suffering, these two schmucks haven't missed a soy latte a single morning. They still go out for their $200 dinners. Forget about it, $200 lunches. Forget a $200 dinner would be cheap. They're not hurting from their own lies. The voters are.
With 91 counts against him, liable for fraud, liable for sexual abuse. I mean, I could go on for 4 hours.
Judge said he raped a woman.
Doctor said wrecked him, damn near killed him. That's what this guy sounds like, Laura. Judge said he raped a woman. And when he said that, it reminded me of that. I'm not kidding. He even says it exactly. Doctor said wrecked him, damn near killed him. This guy is such a stooge. The judge said he raped a woman. The judge, like the judge today, where he is, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch some of the back and forth. The prosecution, Letitia James's lawyers, clearly don't know anything about the topic. Not just real estate, but so much of finance. They clearly don't know about the topics that they are using to prosecute Donald Trump. And when he is not going to let them, go with something that isn't true. So he was combative, but not in a bad way, more like an educating way. He was like, listen, it's not my fault. You're stupid. That's not what that means. Like it's hilarious. And the judge visibly lost his temper and started saying that this isn't a show for anybody but him, and that he'll dismiss him and just infer everything negatively from the testimony, because of course that's how they're doing this. The same thing in the case that Joe was talking about. It's just some radical commie nutcase who you could show proof beyond a reason, but it wouldn't even matter. They're going to rule how they're going to rule. Only one sane judge so far has said well, that's not true, because the DC Court of Appeals said you cannot gag the leading candidate for president of the United States in an election year. You can't do that. So, but other than that, in the other case of the documents case, appears to only be one judge so far who's willing to say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to allow this to happen. At least not until the election is over. That would be interfering with self-governance.
Yeah.
And that's where the concern is here, that there's a lot of different layers of things going on.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, though, perception's reality. And that's what, when I had people going, yeah, but this, yeah, but that, yeah, but. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Perception is reality. And stop your whining. The poll numbers are the poll
Who's
numbers,
whining?
and they're just poll numbers. Still a year out, but I'll tell you what, they're getting worse. And
okay, let's stop right there. This is one thing I want to address. Okay, this is not a normal warning sign for an incumbent president. This is not Barack Obama in 2012. If you watch the ABC News Meet the Press or whatever, the Meet the Press panel with Donna Brazile, God love her, but she had tried to draw the distinction. I'm old enough to remember when Barack Obama was toast. Barack Obama was never toast like this. Never. Never. Barack Obama was never in the 30s in many of these polls, which Joe Biden is. People, the direction of the country is historically bad. Barack Obama, even after he took over the reins after the Great Recession, didn't deal with numbers like this. And Barack Obama never lost the core constituent base of the Democratic Party. Barack Obama never had 30% of the Democratic Party say they don't want him to run for president or more. Barack Obama was still a rock star with his own base. He lost it with independents. He did. And he lost the goodwill he had with Republicans. He did. But because he was Barack Obama and he motivated people, he got a D+5 electorate. That's how he won re-election. Largely with driving Mitt Romney to the very low single digits with black voters. The New York Times final poll in 2020 had Donald Trump at 4% with the black vote. 4%. That's it. In the poll where they had him tied a couple of months ago, he was 12%. Now, in this one, he's 22%. Barack Obama never lost those kinds of numbers. All right. So I have to point that out real quick. I have to bring that on. All right. So we're going to come back to it. The fact of the matter is they're losing it because they know what I'm talking about is real here. And really the only question moving forward is because they lament, and you already heard enough of it. I don't need to keep going, although there is another good part of the clip that is interesting. But they lament about how everything that they have done, the fake hoaxes, the political weaponization of government, the prosecution of a former president, nothing seems to be working. So if I could incorrectly use the phrase like Mika just did, it begs the question. Everyone uses that wrong. I don't know why. We're improperly taught how to use it. What are they willing and what are they capable of doing? And for that insight, I'd really love to bring in my guest if he's ready. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know anybody who did more to push back against the administrative state first and foremost than this guest we have coming on. Of course, I'm talking about the great Devin Nunes. Devin, you're a national treasure.
Rich.
I've told you this before.
How are you?
I'm living the dream as always. Thanks so much for coming on. I've told you this before. I'm going to tell you again. You're a national treasure. What you did during the Russia collusion hoax is, just following politics as long as I have, you get really disenfranchised. You don't expect people to do the right thing. I can't imagine what went through your head when you first walked in that skiff and realized what they did. I can't even imagine. You know what? Can you tell me that? Can we bring because I really want to talk to you about this. Like looking at these poll numbers, Devin, I'm worried about what they're going to do going forward. Yeah,
it was
to talk to about it.
What a better day for me to come on than when we get this massive New York Times poll that comes out. And look, Rich, I'm very skeptical of all polls, and
as you should be. Yeah.
And maybe we can, I guess I can interview you even though it's your show. But one of the things that caught me, number one, New York Times, and then followed up by Axelrod, they're really coming in for the kill. Obama wants Biden out. And so it's really odd that they would put this poll out. And then the number that struck me that was very strange was the Wisconsin number. Yeah. And I don't know, I haven't watched your show since you started, but what do you make of that Wisconsin number? Seems like just kind of a strange outlier when all the other, he's up by 5 points in all the other places.
That's a really good question. And I just didn't get a chance to bring it up yet, but I was going to. If he's ahead by those margins in all of those other battleground states, he's going to carry the Badger state too. And
Yeah.
it's a difficult state to poll. A lot of people look at it and they put it in with Michigan and they put it in with Pennsylvania. And we do in the big Rust Belt poll, we do. But the truth is, there's a lot of Wisconsin that looks a lot more like Iowa than it does Michigan or Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And it's really when it comes to white ethnicity, you have people who are, and so I love this book over here. It's in the corner, The Emerging Republican Majority. He just passed, actually, sadly, Phillips. But he made the case how much ethnicity mattered to presidential vote preference, and he's right. And we showed that in the 2020 polling we did. We tried to explain that to people. And you have like Norwegians, you have Scandinavians, not some as much as Minnesota, which makes Minnesota even harder for a Republican, unless you're a populist like Trump, and then you can carry Minnesota under the right circumstances. But it's just difficult to poll because they're so dispersed all over the state. I have to constantly oversample different groups. And in 2020, I made the audience wait like another day because I wasn't happy with where we were getting geography wise, where we were getting some of these samples from. It was essentially, you think you pulled enough of the white vote, but really, and Nate Cohen did this from the New York Times, he made this mistake in 2020. Really, you're just calling the only librarian who's going to vote for Joe Biden in a rural area of the state. And because they want to talk on the phone, Devin, that kind of person wants to take a poll the way Nate Cohen takes his polls at the New York Times, these long 20-minute interviews on the phone. And the working man or woman in like Rusk or Polk or Sauk counties, they don't want to. So Wisconsin's notorious for this. It's a pain in the butt. And in both 16 and 20, we actually thought that was going to be one of Trump's weaker states. And we had Joe Biden up by 2, but Trump and him tied in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania was, you and I had the same feelings on it, but Wisconsin was still closer than Pennsylvania was at the end. And that happens a lot. It happened to Bush, by the way, not once, but twice. It even happened to George Bush. So it's been like this for years. It's a pain in the butt at the presidential level.
It seems to me like that if he's even close in Michigan and
Yes.
Pennsylvania, that I think Wisconsin of those three, in my opinion, would be the easiest one for him to carry.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And he hasn't been sliding the way some other Republicans have slid in parts of Wisconsin that you need to win. So WOW is getting a little bit hairy, the WOW counties. But, for some reason, him and Senator Ron Johnson do much better in the northwestern parts of the state. We call it lumberjack country. It's like Bayfield, Ashland, right? And
I actually did some campaigning up there in that.
Yeah, you know that area.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about.
When Sean Duffy was in Congress, now he's over at Fox, and his wife is the host of Fox and Friends on the weekends.
That's right.
But he was in Congress, and I went up there and campaigned for a couple of days. It's a beautiful area, especially I was there in the fall. It was just gorgeous.
I imagine it was super.
Yeah.
But it's got an ancestral voting history. Barack Obama used to perform pretty well there, even when Sean was carrying the district. Barack Obama did fairly well compared to other Democrats in his district. It's got this history, and it's the birthplace of progressivism, especially the northwestern part up there. So it's just a weird state. But there's something about Donald Trump. We've gone over it before. Mitt Romney, you could overlay his map with Bush when he lost to the caucus. It almost looks like the exact same map. And you can overlay Donald Trump's with Ronald Reagan, who was the last one to carry it at the presidential level until Donald Trump carried it in 2020 or 2016, excuse me. But yeah, I'm looking at these. When you see these numbers and you're saying be skeptical over them, I agree. And it makes me just think immediately of the lawfare. And what we're seeing happen today in the court, I want to just get your overall reaction to the lawfare. This case in particular today, I don't know if you had any time to watch it, but the judge is just a hothead. I mean, this is just crazy. I honestly don't know how the man deals with the constant assaults the way he does.
Yeah, no, we're just in a really dark place. I was talking to somebody this morning as a country, and I know you wanted me to get into the deep state and all the shenanigans. But what happened, if you go back and look, they got away with there's some really important dates that matter where events occurred that a lot of people just have glossed over, but they all together, it gets us to where we are today. So I remind people that, one of the first investigations I was involved in was the IRS scandal where they targeted conservatives, people in the old, the so-called Tea Party movement.
Yeah.
And they got away with that. Holder was, subpoenaed by Congress. He basically said to screw off, didn't show up, nothing happened to him. There was also manipulation of intelligence that this was really swept under the rug, but people will remember the famous line that Obama used, and that was that Al-Qaeda, bin Laden was dead, Al-Qaeda's on the run. And it wasn't true. And he glossed that over during the election in 2012 when he beat Romney. And then we had this whole birth of ISIS that turned into a disaster. I mean, it was, all the blood and treasure that we lost in Iraq, and then to almost piss it all away overnight, but more than that, to lie about it. And they lied about it, and they manipulated that intelligence during that time period. Ironically, guess who the commander of Central Command? Now, why does Central Command matter? Central Command is the command in the military that oversees the Middle East, specifically the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, Rich, I'll just throw a little question to you. Do you know who the commander was of Central Command at the time when those intelligence numbers were manipulated by the military?
I don't, but illuminate me. Remind me. It's slipping my mind right now. I'm not going to cheat in Google.
So it is a gentleman that goes by the name. He's now the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these people all graduate up, is my point. So they play the system, they do the dirty work, and they get promoted. Yeah. Whether it's, look at the buffoons that we have running our policy right now. I just told you about Austin. Now, we did an investigation into that. Actually, so I was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee at the time when we launched. It took us until 2015 to actually get an investigation launched for something that had occurred 3 or 4 years earlier. But we had whistleblowers, people came through the system. But it was actually Mike Pompeo, who was served under me on the Intelligence Committee, Dr. Winstrup, who's still in Congress from Ohio, who's in charge of the COVID committee. He was also a military veteran himself. And then Ken Calvert from California, who's actually today the chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee. Those three did a task force, and they got it all the way up to General Austin's office. And of course, the trail died. Everybody had amnesia.
Of course.
But that shouldn't surprise you. But these guys graduated up, and then you take who were the big Russia hoaxers in 16 for Clinton? Well, one of the biggest ones was Jake Sullivan, who's now the National Security Advisor. Susan Rice, which we can come back to later, she was the National Security Advisor under Obama when the shenanigans were going on of the whole Clinton, the Clinton DNC launched Russia collusion hoax. You also have to look at the Secretary of State Blinken. He was the one that orchestrated the 51 spies who lie. In other words, the letter about the Hunter Biden laptop, he orchestrated that. So what they do is they empower the corruption. They empower, like, if you're willing to take a bullet, do the dirty work, you move up. You move up and you get promoted. And so they all take care of each other. So you asked me, like, when it came into, by the time the Russia hoax came around, like, I was, like, right away. It wasn't even going into a skiff. I know there's, like, a lot of people see the famous, me coming out of the White House and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But because it ran over and over and over again. But the reality was this, that after the election in 2016, we had a normal briefing like we always get from all the intelligence agencies. When I say we, the House Intelligence Committee. And it was business as usual. There was nothing unusual that had happened, 10 days, 2 weeks after the election of 2016. And when I say nothing unusual from any foreign adversaries. So, just the usual shenanigans, right? Like this country says that, this leader's saying this is what they think. But it was nothing, the Russians had done nothing that was out of the norm of their of their normal behavior. And I'll never forget, I went home for Thanksgiving, and then I get this, strange, all of a sudden I'm getting phone calls from the fake news. And at that time I still, spoke on a limited basis to the fake news, but I would take like their national security teams and that sort of thing. I would, at least take their calls and listen to them. And they had a story that I didn't have, and I had just been briefed, right? So why was it?
Where did this come from?
Where did this come from? It's just like this New York Times poll. So then within, I don't know, I think it was like the week after Thanksgiving, all of a sudden the Senate, and it leaks out immediately, the Senate gets briefed on this bombshell, Russia, Putin, everything. Well, that was impossible. Like nobody was working over Thanksgiving except for people that were creating a shenanigan and a lie. And so the whole thing was a lie from the beginning. So you can't come and brief the United States House of Representatives Intelligence Committee and then over just a short period of time, including Thanksgiving, which nobody works during that time. And then all of a sudden there's like this new bombshell. So it was planted, it was made up. And then you had Obama, Susan Rice, by the way, was involved in this decision. He authorizes something that a lot of people have also forgot about, but the intelligence community assessment. It was an emergency that had to be done about what Russia did during the election. That was all a scheme and a scam for the month of December, leading up until then we get briefed on it the first week of January. Now, once again, how many government bureaucracies, number one, are able to put together any report in that amount of time, like 30 days? But you have to remember, this is 30 days of which 2 of those weeks, nobody's in Washington, D.C. They're all gone, right? So, and then they come back after, and this is the date, you will remember, we all get briefed on January, right around the first part of January. I can't remember if it was the 4th or 5th or 6th, somewhere in there. Comey and Brennan, they all come in. Remember, this is the outgoing Obama administration all coming to tell us, and brief us on this report, which has now all been declassified. Well, the report said nothing, and you can go and read the report. Then there was this annex that they really wanted. They were all excited to talk about, and it was like, prostitutes and P-tapes and Moscow hotel rooms. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I mean, I remember in there, like, we're like, some of us that were the Republicans were like looking at each other, wait. We know if this exists. Like, this is not something that you wouldn't know. Right. Like if there are tapes of Donald Trump with prostitutes in Moscow peeing on beds, like the FBI would know. It doesn't make it into a report to us. And that's why they put it in the annex, and they defined it as very, very good sources of ours have this. Well, have you verified it? How did this get in the report? Nothing that's not verified, like 27 times, gets into any report, especially a report that was done over a 30-day time frame, of which half of that was Christmas and New Year's. So, like, right away, I mean, so already you had the month before, we get the opposite briefing than what the Senate gets, and then it was just conjecture and nonsense. Then we get this report that says absolutely nothing other than this annex, which they can't talk about. Super duper classified, right? Well, it ends up, and what do we end up finding out? Oh, it was the Clinton campaign and the DNC hiring a former British spy who hadn't been to Moscow in 20 years, who then worked with a Russian who happened to live where? Oh, right in Washington, D.C., who worked for the Brookings Institute, which, as you and your listeners probably know, is like one of the left-wing think tanks. So these are all the same people, all working together, all conjuring up stories. And later we find out it was actually just Clinton and campaign people telling this Russian dude that he wasn't even Russian. He was born in Russia, but he was a naturalized U.S. citizen, getting paid. And then they funnel stuff back to Steele that goes into a report that, guess what, makes it into an annex in this Obama Intelligence Community Assessment report. So it was like a circular reporting, basically, that they just made up. And then later, after the fact, we learn that in August, July, late July, early August of 16, and once again, these dates matter. Well, it just so happens that Brennan happened to brief Obama, Biden, Susan Rice, all of them on that the DNC and the Clintons were cooking up this whole thing with Putin and Russia. So they were all briefed on it. They all knew about
They
it.
knew.
They all
They
knew.
knew. Yep.
And so, but taking back in time, how did I know? It was those big, and look, at that time, I'm like, I'm still like a believer in like, safety, security of our country and supporting, the men and women that put their lives in harm's way, our allies that we work with. I mean, I did that for so long and had so many great memories of people, real patriots that want to protect America and save America. It's hard for me to at that point to think that the FBI and Comey and all these guys and Mueller, I mean, at that time, I'm still thinking like, well, they can't be totally corrupted, not all of them.
Yeah.
Well, ends up, the whole damn thing is rotting from inside. But those were the two big indicators. Were those? It was the fact that we got a different briefing, right before Thanksgiving than the Senate did in 16. And then that intelligence community assessment with that nonsense in it. Those were, and then I just kept saying after that, I said, look, if I haven't seen anything to do with, I said this numerous times, so I'm paraphrasing, but because at that point I was still talking to the fake news. I would still do like press availabilities and they would all go crazy on Russia. And I said, guys, I have never seen anything to do with Trump and Russia of any kind. And they look at me like I was, from another planet. Well, what do you mean? We got this. I said, there is no intelligence, zero. There's no intelligence reporting whatsoever about Trump and Russia. So why does this all matter, Rich? It matters because they got away with it.
They got away with it. Yeah.
And then now, what are they doing? You asked me about today. Look, you fast forward what happens. Supreme Court justices' opinions get leaked. The Supreme Court justices get targeted. Nothing happens to them. You fast forward, you got January 6 rioters, many of whom didn't even go into the Capitol, are still in prison. I mean, crazy shit is happening out there. And this is just an extension of it. I think what they did is they raided Mar-a-Lago last August. One, to try to take Trump off the battlefield, because Trump was the number one fundraiser for the Republican Party, for the RNC, NRCC. Now, this is before he had announced that he was running again, but he was out there doing campaign events, and all of the Senate committee, the House committee, they're all using Donald Trump's name in order to raise money.
Of course.
So they wanted to, look, if we go and we raid Mar-a-Lago, we say he's got classified documents, Russia, whatever the hell their bullshit was at the time, then we'll scare all the Republicans, and the Republicans will stop using Trump, and we'll be able to shut down his fundraising, and therefore then he won't run, and boom, problem solved. Well, what happened? A lot of people said, whoa, wait. You just raided the home at Mar-a-Lago. And then, of course, everyone remembers the famous pictures, like, nothing gets said. I mean, yet you just raided a former president's home, and for like 5 days, nothing happens. And this is an important time in history, too, that people need to go back and look. Go look at the press conference of Merrick Garland.
Yep.
At that time, he waits 4 or 5 days. He looks like he just got the living hell beat out of him. He comes out there, can't even speak, and just exits off the stage. Now, Obama's running the Justice Department. Garland is a hack and a token at the top of it. The people below him are very, very dangerous. They all go back to Team Obama years. So, what they did is they went and raided. They were looking for anything they could possibly find. They didn't find anything. They didn't know what to do. They marched Garland out there. He looks like he just got taken to the woodshed.
Yeah.
So it's a major screw up. Then they kind of let it die. And then they got another problem, because in their whole game, then they realize the guy that has a real problem is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the one that's sitting on all kinds of documents. So then they got even a bigger problem. So then they can't help themselves. All these Soros DAs. So the New York one goes, Georgia goes, you get Jack Smith. They just don't care. We're living in a third world country, sadly. Thank God we still have red states that are doing well. I mean, there's, you have, because of the 50 states, we have some places that are generally well governed and there is strong rule of law. But the rule of law is breaking down in every major blue city and state in this country. Nearly every single one. The rule of law is completely broken, and it's and they've, how many, I don't know how many DAs that Soros is now funded, and the left, when I say Soros and the greater left. So all this leads to a very dark place to where we have now. So what do I think about this thing today? I mean, the short story is, I think the only thing that surprises me is that every business group, every Republican, anybody who cares about business and commerce in the state of New York ought to be out there, and every Republican legislator should be out there saying, whoa, 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 we know the state of New York didn't vote for Trump, but this is a man and a family who are doing business. They do not deserve to be treated this way, because what they're doing is nonsense. I mean, anyone who ever has gotten a loan knows exactly they're basically using a financial statement which is essentially the tool that banks use to make sure they know about all the assets that someone has. They don't use it for evaluation. Anybody who's ever gotten a loan knows that. So
as if Deutsche Bank isn't going to go through its own process.
Right. And not only that,
right.
But you also have, this is the state of New York, the financial center of the world, basically, in Manhattan there with Wall Street and everything else. It's not like you don't have 2 centuries of case law there. So there are a lot of norms that are being busted up here. And I mean, I think in the long run, we don't know where this is all going to end up, but the financial center, if you're a Republican, you got to get the hell out of New York. I mean, I mean, with Wall Street, NASDAQ, all the things that are located in New York City, you better get them to Oklahoma or South Dakota or somewhere, because the rule of law is now gone in New York, in the state of New York. Basically, if they decide they don't like somebody or don't like a business, they're going to go after you. So, I think this is just the beginning of what seems to be a very dark chapter of American history, at least in the blue cities and the blue states.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I'm thinking of this question in the context of even what happened because of Russia in 2018, for instance. It was in your delegation. I had polled this race. Dana Rohrabacher we knew the race was going to be competitive in 18, but then Bloomberg comes in, spends at that time, folks, I mean, the millions of dollars he pumped into a relatively small district, in Orange County, was an enormous amount of money, almost an unheard of amount of money for a single person to spend. And he pushed the Russia collusion hoax. It absolutely had an effect. So it's more than election interference with indictments. I mean, then he used these fake narratives, these hoaxes, scams. I mean, really, they're scams. It's like the dark arts the Intel service uses on other countries that, we're trying to influence an outcome in. And they turned it and they used it on us. And because of that, he lost.
The easy way to think about it, Rich, is this way: that they took what, I've been, politics, for 30 years now, starting going back to my days, working on campaigns back in the day as a volunteer. They took what was kind of known as, everybody knew there's the, October surprises, and everybody went out and, researched your opponent to make sure. But typically, everybody knew there was a line that you don't cross, right?
Yeah.
Yes, going out and making sure that you are doing due diligence on your opponent, making sure that people know that, making sure the media knows about that and writes about it, right? Look, it's not fun to be in politics sometimes, but hey, if you've got a felony on your record, or you've got, a bankruptcy or something like that, it's going to come out. You're not going to be able to hide it. It comes out all the time. That was all kind of normal October surprise stuff. Never did you think that a campaign could concoct something out of whole cloth and then get not only the FBI and all the other intelligence agencies, but you got to remember, it was also the Department of Justice that got involved in the Russia hoax. And then they did it again with the Ukraine impeachment hoax, the same players. But I always tell the story that, Mueller walks in there once he gets appointed as special counsel. And, he walks in the door and says, okay, guys, where's the Russians? And then by that time, when Mueller walks in the door, they know there's no Russians. So what the hell did Mueller do for 2 years?
Yeah.
And $50 million? What did he do? This is all lost on people. Went after innocent people like General Flynn. went after people like George Papadopoulos, went after people like Carter Page. There's a whole host of other people that got wrapped up into this and had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars defending themselves against something that the other side made up. Mueller and that witch hunt allowed that to happen. And look, honestly, we had a lot of members of Congress who, even though I kept coming up with the evidence, piece after piece after piece, we had so many senators and for the most part, the House Republicans were pretty good. But, nobody, what people should have been saying was, Mueller, that's it. Come and brief us. If you don't have anything on Russians, this has gone on too far. And then you remember you had the court. I mean, what they did at General Flynn with the judge, like refusing, to let this stuff go. I mean, it's just, it's really just a
Richard Burr,
sad case here.
Richard Burr in the Senate. I mean, he's totally useless. I mean, he's gone now, but by that time, like you said, I mean, he's on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Congressman. He knows what is and what isn't supported by available evidence that he's seen, and that continued with his blessing for months and months, years, more than that, years. But this is, I guess, before, because I want to talk a little bit about what Elon Musk had said in the context of truth, because we didn't get a chance to talk about that on your show. But real quick before I do, that's really the question then. Is Congress even capable of reforming the administrative state if they're going to be able and do? I mean, they got away with it, having the power to not only influence elections and cost congressmen their seat. Like you said, there used to be backgrounds and there used to be opposition research. They just branded him a Russian agent, and they scared 18% of Republican women who didn't come out and vote for him, and hardly Ruta won. And that's what they're doing. So it's almost like they've effectively neutered Congress. And some of the people across the aisle on your own committee were more concerned about you than they were about doing their job, which is to conduct oversight of the intelligence community. Adam Schiff was in bed with them instead of helping you find the truth.
Well, look, I mean, if you stood in the way, I mean, then they went through, I mean, they did it to me and my family. Look, look, I'm not going to complain, because it could be worse. You could be Donald Trump. You could be General Flynn. You could be a lot of these people, but effectively they ran the same operations. When I came out and said, hey, I haven't seen anything here, what did they do? They attacked, my family. I mean, they were staking out my house. They were going to every business side that I had ever been involved in. Crazy stuff. So they're not afraid to run these operations, and they're becoming, I guess my point to you, Rich, is they're becoming more and more brazen with their, with what they're willing to do to corrupt the country. I think that's how you have to look at it. So look, can it be fixed? Look, right now we're in a really difficult spot. You got Biden in the White House, you got Schumer running the Senate, and you have a 4-seat majority in the House. I mean, so about all they can do, the most power they have, is to subpoena, and conduct investigations and expose what's happening. And I know, like, a lot of the people say, well, that one, nobody will go to jail. Well, yeah, but guys, this is all we got. So you got to put one step in front of the other. You got to execute, and you got to do the work. And I know it's hard to do that work because, we slogged through it for years and watched, at the end of the day, nobody go to jail. I mean, I like to tell people, it doesn't piss anyone off more than me, who was, or except maybe President Trump would only be the person more than me that had a right to be pissed off about, what happened, what's happened in history. But it's important for us to remember it. And it's important for us to recognize the powers we have and execute those powers. And when I say we, meaning the people, conservatives in this country. And the same goes, for the red states. The red states have to make sure that they protect themselves against, because they'll go in, as they'll look for a blue city, and they'll go and elect a really left-wing activist DA. And you've seen Soros has been doing that in red states.
And also, too, I mean, creating these alternative channels, because they also use their power. And I was going to play it, but I'll just basically summarize the quote Elon Musk made last week. And I wanted to talk to you about this. He had said that, it was more than election interference on the level we normally talk about. He even brought in Twitter's role. And he said that Twitter was effectively an arm of the administrative state during the 2020 election. And that's why, creation of truth, and others. It's not just social media platforms, but these parallels where they don't have the influence that they can wield like they can on more traditional Silicon Valley sites. You now have Truth, and I see though Joe Biden signed up, right? You have all these other people coming on Truth. I guess first, my question is, what do you see these other? I have never been particularly positive on Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, which is now X. Like I just got a community note last week because we reported on the Florida Republican Assembly, basically passing a resolution telling Ron DeSantis to drop out, come home, and do your job. And they have been friendly to Team DeSantis, and they got somebody to slap. It wasn't even a fact check. Devin,
Yeah.
it said the Republican assemblies aren't a big deal. It's not that big of a deal. Of course, it is a big deal, but who made them do that? Who took a call from Team DeSantis? So I'm just not, again, I don't see this big change to be celebrated yet. So, you know,
I think so the danger is, so look, at Truth Social, the reason that I left Congress is because I watched, I was one of the first guys to be shadow banned on all the platforms. I was one of the first guys I was the first guy to actually go to Rumble, which is now, thank God we have Rumble.
Amen.
That's out there, because my podcast that like what you have was being censored. Nobody was able to see it. So and I think the worst thing that we ever saw happen was in this country. I mean, there's been a lot of bad things, but one thing, once again, that gets lost on people. We had Parler, which was $1 billion company. I was one of the first guys on Parler. That was started. It was a grassroots. So many people were on Parler, and then some 24 companies in the U.S., some of the biggest companies in the United States of America, just decided, we're just going to cut you down. We're going to shut you off completely, and boom, it was gone. So I knew there was a need to have something like Rumble that was totally self-contained, that couldn't be shut down by big tech. And then when President Trump called me and said, "Hey, would you come and build this company?" I knew it had to be done, because having free flow of information is so critical. And I think and we can go into kind of some of the different companies and that are out there, but really what we're about, what Truth Social is about, we're a movement. And we're a movement made up of people that have been banned, who don't want to be, who want family-friendly content. And it's going to continue to grow. It's just it's a nice place to be. And I think that's our comparative advantage. You mentioned that, well, a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's MAGA people. Okay, well, yeah, but we're open to people. I mean, Biden's on the platform.
That's not
on the platform.
Yeah.
But what is Twitter? I mean, Twitter is really is also an echo chamber for like all of these people going at each other on the left and the right.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not really interested in that too much. Right. So, it's kind of like a global PR wire is what Twitter is. I've said that for a long time. I'm glad that, President Trump and myself are very supportive when Elon Musk said he was going to go buy it. I mean, look, he overpaid for it. It was kind of a crazy decision, but a lot like, what we uncovered in the Russia hoax and everything else, getting the truth out there, exposing this, and, learning that the FBI was paying them, which, by the way, shouldn't surprise anyone, because one of the primary Russia hoaxers, a guy named Jim Baker, you may remember that name.
Yep.
He worked at the FBI lawyer. What did he do when he finally got run out of government because of his involvement in the Russia hoax? He runs over to Twitter, and he's like one of the top people at Twitter. Like, did you think that the FBI and the Democrats weren't heavily involved? What did like we talked about earlier, what happened? What do we know about these people? If you do dirty work, you get promoted and you get to a pretty good spot. So for Musk to expose all that, it's great. But the reality is that the American people and people around the globe need a movement like Truth Social, because it's your voice and you have a piece of your own voice. That with us, we're not using algorithms to the feed is your feed, the group feed is your feed. And we're trying to take the best of all these platforms and make it a safe, family-friendly environment. So the only thing that you can't put up on Truth Social is, we don't want, if you don't see it on like old school cable television, the little rabbit ears, if you don't see it on, people know what that means. It takes just a little bit of common sense. We don't want it on True Social. So, we don't want the illegal stuff. We don't want the child porn. But look, if you want to come on there and disagree with People's Pundit, and you don't think Rich's polling is good, that's great. You can go on there and do that. And so over time, people want to be free, and people will continue to join the movement that we're creating at True Social. And I think you asked me about like what's going to happen with Meta and Twitter or X or whatever it is now. I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah.
What are some data points that we do know? Since you're a data guy. We know that people that are over the age of probably now 50, 60 years old, they'll spend some time on Facebook. But really, you don't see any young people on Facebook. Now, Facebook does have a pretty good global presence around the world. If you look at Instagram is definitely, for a US company, it's big. And there's under the age of 50, there's a lot of people on there, and people, it is a serious platform with a lot of folks on there. But it's not exactly a platform that is for what True Social is, or it's not a place to really put out PR. It's a place to kind of for entertainment. Then let's talk about TikTok. TikTok which is started by the Chinese, a very dangerous product. But as you know, it's young people that are watching and on TikTok. It scares me. I think to some degree, it's TikTok that's really aiding and abetting some of this nuttiness that you see of these, queers for Palestine and all these, protesters out there. We have over half of them, half kids under 25 think that Hamas was justified in killing 1,400 Israelis. I think you have to look, was TikTok one of the causes of that kind of flow of information? So, where will True Social be? We'll be there with Rumble, providing a whole ecosystem to where we're not going to be shut down by the same people that shut down Parler. And it really is going to be a movement into the future. And so, and we didn't, one final thing on that, Rich. I think, and this has been in the although fake news, so you got to be careful what you believe. But Elon Musk paid $44 billion. It's now, they're saying it's worth, around $14 billion. He's been attacked by, a bunch of the brand advertisers are pulling out, but I would probably argue that was because the people just didn't exist there. Like, people were spending, or not people, but big brand advertisers were spending a ton of money, but there were a ton of bots there.
Yeah.
And so, what were they really selling on there? So I think, we don't know what is going to happen with Elon Musk. Look, he is the richest man in the world, but even those people have limits. At some point, you can't keep, this was just in the news. I don't know if it's true or not, but the banks are, there's like 12 or $13 billion worth of debt. That's a big stroke to make every month. So there's been talk that it could be taken over again and been, turned into some type of IPO. So once again, we don't know what's going to happen, but it just proves the need that you have to have places like True Social, because the future is murky for these other companies. And we're really going to be the only one out there that is going to stick to the, no algorithm and family-friendly environment.
What do you make of Biden signing up to that? What do you think he's doing there? You can't on the one hand say it's a MAGA site and then sign up to it. You're kind of hurting your own argument. You guys do a great job with the trolls and the bots. It does not, as somebody with the follower count I have on Twitter, it's just, I don't even want to check my replies anymore. It sucks. That's how bad it is. I can check my replies on Truth, no problem. There are always people who come in and take a jab at you and troll. That's the way it is. That's the nature of it. But on X, it's something different. It's like the same response 12 times in a row. It's very clearly bots. And you guys do a great job, obviously, keeping them off.
Well, our team, thank you for saying that, but it is a battle. There's a lot of bad actors out there that are constantly trying to harm our site. And so, just have patience with us but you're right. For the most part, we don't tolerate the bot and the troll activity. And there's a different, some trolling, as Rich, can be two different things. There's like fake trolling, then there's also trolling that's not there to really that's nasty. And, once again, it's not something you'd see on old school rabbit ears television. If you're just there to, cuss at somebody, like, look, it's fine. You get upset one time, you cuss a few times. But if you're just every single post, you're just saying the same thing. Look, sorry, we don't want you at True Social, right? It was just not something that we need. So we work really hard on keeping the site clean. But it is a challenge. I mean, I feel for, and I think that's why you've seen Elon Musk look at, what are ways that, he's talked about maybe charging people for it. I mean, all of these companies, it is a huge challenge to try to keep the sites clean from bots and illegal activity.
Yeah, I can't say I've seen. Maybe he has some numbers to back it up, but I can't say that I've seen any real change in or improvement in bot activity since he charged $8 to have a verified check mark. I just haven't seen it. Maybe it's coming, and I know he's got a lot of plans for it, but I do try to spend more time on Truth and other sites because I love Rumble. What you said about Rumble is 100%. We've been under the gun with YouTube too. Once they get their hook in you, they never let go. And it just becomes one strike after another. And we, for months, almost probably over a year, we were teetering on that point where we were getting a strike dropped. And the minute we did, we would immediately get a second one. So we were always on the cliff, always on the cliff. Wait. Election stuff, Devin.
I'm sorry.
Everybody wanted to know.
Wait. So you're talking about this show, your show right here?
Yes.
You got a strike from YouTube?
I have gotten it collectively. I don't even know how many strikes there have been because every time one would fall off, which leaves you open to still getting another one before outright being banned, we would always get two. And then I would, sometimes I didn't even stream to YouTube when we had two strikes because I didn't want to give them a reason. They had already gone back into all the old videos and they were giving me strikes for videos before some of the policies on election fraud and stuff like that. That's what they started to come at me with. But I had a guest quote Steve Bannon and say, elections have consequences, stolen elections have devastating consequences. And he said, quoting Steve Bannon, and they still gave us a strike for it. And then the other one was just being critical of the U.S. effort in Ukraine. We probably get monthly emails from them telling us that demonetization is on the table if we continue to talk about Ukraine the way we do. So God bless Rumble. That's why, YouTubers, I know you love it, but this is why I constantly press you to move over to Rumble, because one day they may just vaporize me. And I got on their radar over the election stuff, simply putting up things, for instance, like, and I still have it here because I remember this, Iowa, we were talking about anomalies after 2020. Iowa is, obviously it's a whiter state, it's a smaller state, but ironically, it has high predictive value. 31 counties that voted for Barack Obama and then voted for Donald Trump, pivot counties in Iowa, and they're highly predicted. And yet 31 and more out of any state in the union, Trump held every single one of them in 2020. They have a greater than 70% predictive value rate, and he held every single one of them and yet lost the election like that. And this just doesn't happen, Devin.
I just find it really, I mean, no offense, Rich, but you are
not a bomb thrust.
You're a pollster. I mean, you discuss data, like your subset of people that are interested in like polling data. I mean, it's not like, this is not like some major, you got to be a real political wonk to want to like dive into data.
That's right.
Right. So it's not like that's just bizarre. I mean, why they would even waste time. I mean, targeting somebody like you, that's actually shocking. I would have thought, okay, a pollster is not going to get targeted by a big tech. But clearly you have been.
I had in 2016, I had people from Nielsen and Google consumer surveys, basically calling and emailing me on the low, telling me to hang in there because they didn't want pollsters showing different results, and that they were not happy with the work being done at Google consumer surveys, which were more favorable to the former president than the media polls were. And ours were obviously more favorable as well. But they were not more favorable. They were more accurate. They were correct. But yeah, I think it's a credibility thing. And after the claims of election fraud, after we went, I don't think they wanted people to know how unlikely it is for somebody to carry Iowa, North Carolina, and Florida and Ohio and lose the presidency. And how many times that has happened over the course of our modern history of electing presidents.
Well, what did they say about the recent ruling? What was it in Connecticut where they're having to redo an election?
The rules are different. The rules are different for them, Devin. Judges only recognize election fraud when the Democrats are asking them to. You know, it's really not a whole lot different from that video that got the judge to act than what Kerry Lake had shown in Arizona. I mean, I personally, being a part of that case, being a witness, I saw tapes that people probably have not seen on the internet, and there were people, you know, that were very clearly not dropping off absentee ballots for their family. They had those U.S. Post Office flat fee boxes, you know, and they were just stuffed, and they were dropping them in drop boxes, going to different drop boxes with different boxes. And Devin,
and what's the story? And here's the other thing. Somebody that's watching this, I don't have time to go do it, but I guarantee you there is a story behind the story in Connecticut. So you're exactly right. Whoever didn't win, or whoever the local Democrats wanted to win, clearly didn't win.
Yeah.
And so there were forces that be that, and I'm just speculating here, but I guarantee you there's more to this story than what happened. Of the all of a sudden, oh my God, there's gambling here and in the casino.
Yeah, I mean, give it time.
Like
he's definitely an outsider, and they were trying to protect an incumbent mayor. So we'll see. I'm sure there will be. I'm sure we will figure that out. And then in North Carolina, not far from me, there was nothing widespread, but it was very clear problems, and this was relating to the 2018 election, and a judge ordered a completely new election. So far in the modern era, the only instances we've ever seen of anybody get remedy for vote fraud are Democrats. They just have different standards. The judges treat them very differently. They have standing when others, like a Republican, would be told, you don't have standing yet. Wait until it harms you. And then when it did, the judge will bring it, and no judge will actually want to take an action that overturns or reverses any kind of vote they do for Democrats. I mean, it's very clearly a different pattern. I held you way past your time.
I guarantee you there's more to that story there.
No doubt. And we'll figure it out. It'll come to light. They can't keep it forever. Someone will be burned by it, Devin, and then it'll come out. That's typically how it works. It may take 6 months, but we'll get there. You stayed a lot longer than I told you would. So I really appreciate that.
I'm a big fan, and I love the work that you do. And obviously, we love the fact that you're on True Social. And look, and I hope that I'm reciprocating here, because I've got my little once a week podcast. So I'm hopeful that you'll come back on and
anytime
when you get some new polling.
Anytime. That will be soon. I actually just put it out. I want to poll, and some people I did see there's like dissent. But I want to poll Iowa again. Not that it matters in a general, because if President Trump is the nominee, that state is off the table. It's gone. He takes it. But there's all of this talk about Kim Reynolds and her endorsement. And I'm telling you, Devin, it's not going to do anything. But we'll poll it again. If I'm wrong, I always admit when I'm wrong. But that is the point of it. And then to see the general, status of where everybody is. But that and the Rust Belt poll. So it's coming up. Stay tuned. I'll come back on. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. And speaking of the narratives to watch, it's also interesting to watch the changing narratives. And that's one thing I get to see all the time now. I used to be, knee deep in intelligence work all the time and Congress. Well, now, running True Social, you get to see these narratives develop, and some come and go. Right. So the story has been, by the Never Trump world, that, well, Trump just can't win. Trump can't win. Trump can't win. Well, that went into, that was their big mantra. And in no way he's going to ultimately, DeSantis or pick your candidate, they're going to win. And then it went down to, well, it depends on, that if they can win either, if any of these challengers if one can win New Hampshire, one can win Iowa, one can win South Carolina, that'll be it for Trump. Well, then it went to, well, who can get second or third place in Iowa? Because they basically seceded that Trump's going to win Iowa at all these states. And then And now they're down to the latest thing that I saw from the crazy Never Trump world is, well, what's going to happen when Trump actually gets convicted
That's it.
and
That's
goes
their
to
Hail Mary,
jail?
brother.
And then everybody's going to say, oh, I really want Ron DeSantis, or I really want Nikki Haley. Like, that's where they've come. I probably missed like 20 other narratives in there, but that little, that's where this has gone in like the last 4 months.
That's where, wait till he announces, wait till he starts campaigning, wait till there's a debate, wait till the second debate, wait till this, wait till, and we're really at the end of the line here now, which I've known, by the way. And months ago, when I said this on the show, Team DeSantis flipped out on me on Twitter. So I knew that was true. I mean, I knew because his donors told me it was true. It's no big surprise. When I hear something, I tell people where I heard it from. It was his own donors being extremely skeptical that he could turn the race around. And their pitch to them was, even if we can't, don't worry, lawfare is going to take Trump off the table. And if he is convicted of something, then we're going to argue that the delegates should be unbound and the party should nominate somebody else. Listen, Devin, if that happens, no Republican will possibly win the White House. There will be huge percentages of Republicans loyal to the president who will never vote for somebody who benefited from that and will be done at 10 o'clock at night. And Joe Biden will be reelected and we'll go home early because we'll lose a very key state very quick. You know,
Joe Biden or somebody else.
And
I think when you were on my podcast, you saw what's happened now. I think Obama's doing everything he can to get Biden out. Yep.
Axelrod is Barack Obama, folks, in case you don't know that. And George Stephanopoulos is ABC. So, if they're saying that, and Nate Cohen is, he's doing it for the New York Times. I mean, they put up, there is no reason for them to have asked about a generic Democrat. That is the biggest trick a pollster could pull. The generic people mean nothing. So the only reason they're doing that is to show Democrats that it's Joe Biden. If you got rid of Joe Biden, maybe you could beat Trump, or you would beat Trump. And that's the argument. So, but it's difficult to remove a sitting president. We'll see how it goes. But we'll see. We'll just see.
I think that's what the trouble they're running into. They've been trying to coax him out. Yeah. And now they're having to up the pressure. It's fascinating to watch. And of course, nobody's really reporting on it because if you're center right, you don't really have the sources that you would need inside the Democratic Party. That's and right. all the left-wing media who have all the sources, they're all in on it. They all know what's happening, but none of them will report it.
That's right. And that's again, the point of truth, I think, is really important that you guys did this because that what you just said is true. And it's even true with what makes the rounds on social media, what you'd hear, what you didn't. Look what they did to the New York Post. You just would never hear a story like that. If truth was around before 2020, there would have been more people who heard about the Biden situation with the New York Post. And by the way, when they pull the question on the felony, what if he has a felony? They never ask, what if Joe Biden took a bribe from China? What if Joe Biden is impeached because he took money from Ukraine and lied about what his business dealings with his son? It's only ever one thing. And of course, I would never ask those questions because voters know what they know how you want them to respond, and they'll lie to you. But the truth is they're not going to vote for Biden anyway. They're just not. I mean, it's crazy. Barack Obama's own pollster admitted that. They're either lying to the pollster or lying to themselves. There's no way they're going to vote for Joe Biden. And I really agree. Tell people where to stay up on what you're doing, Devin, and when your show is and everything.
Well, if you're not on Truth Social, join Truth Social, join our movement, join the family. You can follow Rich there, and he's at People's Pundit. You can follow me at Devin Nunes. And then typically on Fridays, I do a podcast. Most of the time it's about 3. It's usually around 3 p.m. Eastern. And I try to usually focus on somebody that's on Truth Social where we kind of highlight them. But I just kind of use it, Rich, really as a way to thank people that come on the show. And it keeps me kind of engaged also in some of the sometimes I'll have some old intelligence people on, things of that nature. But I had John Ratcliffe on the other day, former director of national intelligence, served in the House with me, but talking about the war in Israel. So it's it's just a fun time, and it's allows me to also have to use the technology, right? So I've
Yeah.
got to use Rumble, I've got to use Truth Social, so it keeps me active in the social media realm, so that I know when our users come and complain to me, I know exactly, I can say, hey, I'm on the Rumble product too, I posted it to Truth too. So and those are always things we're trying to fix and make better, and it's easier if you actually are consistently using the product.
That's
And
right.
so that's
Yeah.
what we do.
I'll tell you, I get more referrals from Truth to my locals page than either one of the other two. I don't know why that is, but this high. It seems like a very higher engagement. I'm probably a lot of stuff on X. Nobody's even there. Just built a following over time. It'll eventually get there with Truth too. But it just seems like if I share something like this show on Truth, I can see the referrals that come over. So it's good, and it integrates
Well, it's
really well
because a
with
lot of
Rumble.
people are being they're shadow banned basically. We have so many news, and I won't tell you who they are because I'm sure they don't want their internal information out, but
Right.
they get more traffic from True Social than they do from all the other platforms combined in some cases.
Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt the whatever ratio, it's called in that world. There's no doubt we share a poll, put up the show. If I got that much on X, it would be way, way more. And by the way, with your show is good viewership, and I'll come back on anytime. I got I don't know how many subscriptions, but I told you that. I messaged you that. It's like,
That's
whoa,
awesome.
look at these numbers. Yeah. So thanks for coming on. I hope you come back as well, and let me
All right.
know. I'll come back on when we're done with some polling anytime and talk to you about it. Really appreciate you coming on, Devin. Thanks so
All
much.
right, Rich. Thank you. Great to be with you.
You too. All the
All right.
best. Devin Nunes, ladies and gentlemen. Now the running True Social over there. It just interesting insight into, him and Kash Patel have insight into how the Russia hoax developed that many people don't. He was obviously in an incredibly unique situation. Those dates matter. Just think about it's just when I remember editing at People's Pundit Daily, and trying to focus people, because it was such an obscure story. Focus people on context and the timeline, because they are intentionally trying to obfuscate the fact pattern. And there was no source better to help do that than the work Devin Nunes was doing. And I got to tell you, I don't know how many other guys, and he's modest. He's obviously being very modest. How many other guys would have looked at that information, come back from that break, heard this crap, and just not fought back? I would listen. I'm sorry, but I'm a cynical guy. I will say that probably the vast majority of potential Republican chairs would not have taken the stand, would not have, taken a stand against that hoax like Devin Nunes did. And by the way, look what he got for it. Adam Schiff turned on him. It was disgusting. And Adam Schiff is supposed to be his partner at that time, overseeing the intelligence agencies from doing bad things. And instead, Adam Schiff was a crook. And, they tried to remove him over it. Just unbelievable, which tells me, with the conversations we were having, they can take out members of Congress. So Congress, at least not yet, is not the correct place, I don't think anyway, for reform. The Congress is going to have to help a bold executive who is resolved, and that is just resolute is the word, in his mission or her mission to take the deep state down a peg, to put them back where they belong. It shouldn't even be a deep state. Frankly, we're an insular power. There should not be a deep state, not to this level, not where they just don't like Richard Nixon's Dayton agenda. So, they're going to get rid of him, not where they think Donald Trump is a threat to them or any other president for that matter. So if you're a Barack Obama fan, you should be furious that there is a powerful deep state out there the way it is, because of course they did to Barack Obama what they do to everybody else, which is sit his ass down, put a folder in front of him and tell him, this is what we got on you. We know it about your wife. We know about your alternative lifestyle. We're going to blow you up and you're going to bend. And he did. After promising all of those people hope and change, it became real clear, real quick. There was never any hope for any real change. He bent over like all of them do. And the one guy who didn't, we ended up here. And can it be? Look, it's not just they defeated Dana Rohrabacher, who would not buy into the Russia collusion hoax, went and met with Julian Assange, right? They spend millions pushing a hoax to defeat him. It's more than that, folks. It really is. It's convincing a nutcase left-winger that Devin Nunes is the problem. Devin Nunes is an enabler of the agent of Putin in the White House. That man who was just on the show could have been hurt badly. Steve Scalise was shot. 4 others were shot by a lunatic that Joe Scarborough and his wife and the rest of them convinced of this fraud. And the FBI pulls it down real quick because they never want you to know the motive when it's not good for the left. They took it down real quick, had Facebook remove his page real quick, but not before we grabbed those screenshots. And his very last post was, there's a traitor in the White House. Republicans are his enablers. Somebody's got to do something about it. As we reported on People's Pundit Daily, you can still look at them now. I'm not going to go and give away his name because we don't name them. We don't say anything about them. Look at, somebody had brought it up before. Absolutely. They were going to hide the motive of the shooter in Nashville from us as well. Why? Because that's a crazy nutcase that the left exploited. We have a bad mental health illness issue in this problem in this country. It is serious. It's severe. And the left exploits it, and they don't give a damn who dies. That's the truth. I've said this, and I've gotten a lot of trouble in the past from saying it, but it's true. The FBI even. Law enforcement of all different kinds, federal, state, all different, academia have all told them they are a contagion to the events of mass shooting. They are part of the problem. They don't give a damn. Couple dozen more dead kids helps them get closer to their goal of taking away your guns. So those kids, to them, sadly, are worth the sacrifice. Folks, they've known this since Columbine. Once upon the time, Mother Jones, of all places, did tremendous work reporting on the academic research behind this. They are a contagion. And the worst part about it is they know that the contagion effect is typically more deadly than the initial event. So if you have a Columbine, for instance, you'll have a copycat of a Columbine that tries to beat Columbine out because of the media. They're going to get notoriety. They're going to be remembered, whatever it may be, whatever their ambition is. So they try to one-up the event that the media exploits for ideological purposes. And again, every single editor at every newspaper, at every production news network like Fox or MSNBC, they all know that is true. They just don't give a damn. Yeah, Gopher, I did want to check out the Iowa poll. The problem is there's not a whole lot to it. There just isn't. And I did see the Trafalgar poll. It's Trump down a little bit. Trafalgar was a little bit closer to where we were, but he's still way ahead. And if I'm thinking, oh my God, some of these people are just crazy. I don't see much of a difference between Never Trump, like Devin was talking about, and the left anymore. They all want the same thing. They're going for the same thing. That's the truth of it. I just, in their behavior, the things they're even saying at this point, as I'm scrolling through to try to get you this Trafalgar poll to look at, I just don't see any big difference. But I will tell you, Nikki Haley is the one who made the most gain out of this poll. DeSantis remains in second, but she's coming up on him pretty quickly. All right, here it is. I'll show it to you just because it was a request out there in the super chat world. Honestly, guys, shoot me when you give contributions to the Public Polling Project, because I do want to talk about the poll, what's going on. Don't forget to put your comment. All right. Right now, there are 2 forms up. There's the Rust Belt poll, which is under the national poll. So it's only about 40-something% funded. And Laura and I decided we didn't want too much time to go by before the next national poll because we like having, close to monthly trackers. Right? So we just pulled the trigger and did it, paid for the rest ourselves. And then there's the Georgia poll, which is maybe about half funded. I could be wrong. It's maybe less, actually, than the national. But we had a little bit of a surplus budget thing here, and it's not big enough to poll a Rust Belt state or to do the Rust Belt poll. But Iowa is smaller. It's cheaper. So we were willing to do that, considering the endorsement of Kim Reynolds, which I'm telling you, I'm just not going to really see that there's going to be much of a difference. Vivek continues to struggle because Vivek is not making inroads with certain Republican voters that you clearly need in order to win a Republican nomination. Iowa is a state that's going to, what's the word? It will expose some of that. And then New Hampshire will as well if you're not making a connection with them, right? So for a while, Vivek had soared a little bit. I hate that word with bottom tier candidates because there's no surge. You're going from 6 to 16. That is 10%, but you're still below 1/5 of the vote, especially if there's a front runner who's doing as strong as Donald Trump is. But there are some unlikely voters in this that will no doubt drive down Trump's numbers a little bit. All right. Yeah, Jonathan actually just said it in the chat. People don't trust Vivek. He ran into a trust issue. He did. He did not make enemies with the majority of the Republican primary vote like Ron DeSantis' team did, but he still didn't pass the muster. And telling you these voters in Iowa and New Hampshire will sniff bullshit out real fast. They really will. All right. In South Carolina. And while he was gaining pretty significantly in Florida, Texas, and California, states like that, we did see Vivek rise to second place in some of our polling. Unfortunately for him, it didn't stay. And he just couldn't build outside of the moderates and the suburbanites. He just couldn't build on it. Hold on. Let me just take a real quick puff and we'll get in on this. Among those who say they're very likely, that 71% right there, I don't need crosstabs to know. I can tell you right from the end, just from my own experience. This is quite a bit of, he's calling them likely voters, but he put very unlikely and he put unlikely and unsures in there. I suspect he did that. And if Robert Cahaley was on, and we should invite Robert on, in fact, I don't know why I don't. We should bring on other pollsters. I would like that. You guys would like that? You'd like to see, because I know these guys. I mean, we can easily bring them on the show. If Robert was on right now, I 100% guarantee you that he did that because they have vote history. So when I looked at Seltzer's poll the other day, she tightened the voter screen. What she didn't tell us in her methodology was whether or not they screen for vote history. If you go to Big Data Poll and you go to any one of our blogs with our press releases for our results, our poll release, or you go to the Public Polling Project pages where the trackers are, you will see that it will tell you specifically whether there was a screen based on vote history. And I guarantee you that Robert put these people in here because they had at least some vote history. 71.1% though, of those, I'm telling you, Trump is higher. Because among those the most likely to vote, Trump is outperforming. If the caucus were held tomorrow, who would you most likely support for president? DeSantis has about a 3-point, really 2.4. Robert does what I do. Tenths of a percentage point. We do not round to the nearest whole number. We want to show you that because that's how elections are reported. Same thing with him. And I agree. We have the same philosophy on that. Trump is at 44, which is still an extremely strong result. Since 1988, nobody has won the Iowa caucuses in an open contest with this level of support. George W. Bush he was close. He got about 40% of the vote, but usually people win with 20s and low 30s. Even when Rick Santorum won, it was nowhere near this. When Ted Cruz won, it was nowhere near this. Trump himself was not polling anywhere near these numbers. So even if, and you could, I said this as a joke on, I think it was Truth NX, that Steve Kornacki could have spoke slower for the stupid, had someone signing what he was saying for the hearing impaired. And if somehow NBC could have provided Braille to blind people just to make sure they understood what he was saying, you would still have idiots from Team DeSantis' world pretending that if all of these people jumped out of the race and one person was left, that somehow they'd be able to get to 50. That's not how statistics works. I hate the second choice option. We debated this in the live chat last night, and I took it off the questionnaire because It's not getting through to people's damn heads anyway. But half of DeSantis' voters are Trumpers. If DeSantis got out of the race, they'd go to Trump. About a quarter of Nikki Haley's are. Almost all of Vivek Ramaswamy's are. Doug Burgum's gives up a whole lot to Trump. Most of Christie's voters would go to somebody else like a Nikki Haley, but they also don't particularly like Ron DeSantis. Asa Hutchinson and Binkley, people like that, they may not even caucus. The undecided is now too low. You can't shuffle them up. If half of DeSantis' vote goes to Donald Trump, he's at 53%. Damn near. I just hate to tell everybody this. Let's keep going with his age participation. He did make it a rather older sample. It's not as old as mine. That's probably a little bit, well, I don't know, because he does 18 to 24, then 25 to 34. We stick within the exit poll range, 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 39. We also do the, that's the age detail, 40 to 49, 50 to 64, 65 to 74, 75 plus. We do the age detail like that, but then we also do regular age 18 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 64, 65 plus. So it's a little hard to see how much overlap from different groups there would be there, but I would say ours is probably a little bit younger and a little bit more first-time caucus goers. Every time pollsters in the Iowa caucus screw up the first-time caucus goer, they blow the election bad. And Seltzer was right in 2008 with Obama and Hillary because she knew a lot would be first-time caucus goers. She nearly screwed the pooch in 2016 because two things. She underestimated first-time caucus goers. I think she had them at 28% or something. They turned out to be 40 plus. And then also, I believe she had evangelicals at around 40 something percent, and they turned out to be 60% plus of the electorate. So that's why she kind of screwed the pooch in 16. Not badly. She was right about vote preference by the groups. She just estimated who would show up incorrectly. And I am leaning on the side of caution because these people are adamant, even though they don't have a caucus history, they are going to caucus. And I'm going to believe them because Donald Trump is on the ballot. Every single time I did not believe a voter who told us it was their first time voting either ever or in a while, and Donald Trump was on the ballot, I paid a price. Grossly understating Iowa, his support in Iowa in 16. I think our final Iowa poll was Trump plus 3 or something. And we were closer in Ohio with some of those younger first-time voters. We did not screen them out in our second to last poll. We came almost dead on the margin. And then when we screened some out, in our last poll, tightening the voter screen, his margin was reduced, and we screwed the pooch. So I listen when Trump is on the ballot. If they say it, then I believe it. 3% Hispanics about right, 3.5% other, 93.5%. It's very white, very, very white. Gender, male 49, female 51, pretty close. Yeah. I mean, so there it is. I don't see any cross tabs. Otherwise, I'd go over it a lot more than that. So go for it. It's about the surface level. I can do it. I did want to just show you, though, before we are getting close, I did want to show you, here is Trump. Keep an eye on his shares. This is Trump in the New York Times. So, by the way, expect the New York Times next year to start polling like they did last time. Do not expect these people to keep such Trump-friendly numbers as we get closer to the election. You ever watch Narcos Mexico? That's what these people do. They're pushing it out to cover for the fortification. So they push out crap. Frankly, I'm sorry. I don't know how Nate could have gotten the numbers he got last presidential cycle. He seems to be decent at polling midterms, other than ones in Florida. But he cannot poll presidential races for the life of him. And that was something, by the way, another DeSantis influencer I refuse to mention because we used to be friends, and then he turned into a piece of shit. He went to Twitter and was like, this is like the most accurate poll out there. No, they were not. They were pretty accurate in 22. They were not accurate at all in 2020. Every single one of these states, except for Georgia, they had Biden leading in and leading big, and not within the sampling era, big. And Georgia, they herded to a tie at the last minute, but they had Texas pretty close. Nate Silver had Texas blue because of them. Florida was Biden plus 6, and then they got a little closer to Biden plus 3. again, screwed it up. Wisconsin, they made more Democratic last time as well. So Pennsylvania, I believe, was Biden plus, and I can get you their history now because it's important, because we're all looking, and Devin brought it up before during the interview. What's up with Wisconsin? And I actually forgot to say this, and I should have. The New York Times in 2020 had themselves been more favorable to Trump in some of these other Rust Belt states than they were in the state of Wisconsin. All right. So here we go. In Pennsylvania, theirs was Biden +6. Wisconsin was Biden +11. Michigan was Biden +8. Truth be told, Michigan voted, Pennsylvania voted to the left of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was, honestly, Trump won Wisconsin. Without indefinitely confined, he won the damn state. Let's get real. But it twice now had polled more to the left when Trump was on the ballot, and then voted to the right of these other states, okay? Or most of them at different times. Certainly Michigan, certainly Nevada, even, Georgia and Wisconsin were pretty close. So it is possible they're just running into that problem again. His white vote share is so high that I don't know how we would lose Wisconsin like that. Asians maybe, because there is a 6 to 8% Asian block in Wisconsin. There is not in any other of those whiter Rust Belt states, and they have less black voters than, let's say, Michigan or Pennsylvania. And Trump is doing much better with black voters, but that doesn't get you to a +4, +5. His white vote share would carry in Wisconsin. It's possible, it's probable. They just modeled it a little too young, maybe, or maybe they modeled it too left wing. I don't know. But what we're looking at here is a 9-point shift in the state of Wisconsin to Trump since 2020 in the New York Times poll. In the state of Nevada is the biggest shift. That was Biden +6. We're looking at a 16-point shift towards Trump in the state of Nevada. And then when you ask, well, what if he's convicted of a felony? You see another 20-point shift away from Donald Trump. That's a little bit screwy to me. Folks, public opinion does not change like that. And just like I'm explaining to you the difference in their polling versus real results, I'm telling you it's not real. And same thing with Nikki Haley, which I want to bring up right now. Where is Nikki Haley's? Okay. Actually, let's look at Nikki last. Let's look at DeSantis next. Okay. Here's the crosstab. All right. Arizona, not that bad. Pretty close to Trump, 46 to 42. You'll notice though that both DeSantis and Biden's support shares fall compared to Trump v. Biden. I can't stress this enough. People are misreading polls, and they're taking the top lines, especially when it comes to Nikki Haley. They don't understand what's happening. When you look at DeSantis, for instance, yes, DeSantis is up 4 in Wisconsin. But what do you see happening here? You see the vote share for Biden staying roughly lower, about the same. It's DeSantis getting to be known now in a way that he was not known before. He does a lot worse with black voters. He does a lot worse with Hispanic voters. That's going to hurt him in a state like Michigan, in a state like Pennsylvania, and definitely in a state like Nevada. He would lose. Let me say this again. 45 to 41 is what he's leading Joe Biden. That looks like Adam Laxalt to me. And when push comes to shove, those voters in Washoe and in Clark are going to vote for Biden. And Ron DeSantis is going to lose because his vote share is only 45%. You cannot win Nevada with 30% of the Hispanic vote. Trump, on the other hand, is above 40, and overall, he's above 50 in the Silver State against Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's vote share is higher. And let me go back and forth so I can show you. 41, 50, it's one state actually where it's about even, but Trump is 41 to 52 with Trump leading. So there are people who don't know him yet enough, but they would not vote for him because he doesn't have the racial demographics to back it up. All right. Also, if you go back and forth real quick, you'll see, for instance, in Georgia, 49 to 43, you can see that DeSantis not only falls, but Biden increases. That, again, is because now people are getting more familiar with Ron DeSantis. It wasn't the case a couple of months ago. Nikki Haley has the benefit that Ron DeSantis had months ago before anyone knew who Ron was, and his favorability was still positive. Nikki Haley is not a known quantity. So you will see her with these ridiculous leads in these states that she will never hold. Nikki Haley has no chance at winning the state of Michigan by 10 points, let alone at all. She has no chance of winning Nevada because in order to do so, you can't do it on the back of white voters alone. You need increased support with Hispanics. She will lose in Pennsylvania, 49-39. If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. Now, she does better with black voters, which makes her more competitive in Michigan and Pennsylvania, but she's not going to hold on. Arizona, no chance with 30% of the Hispanic vote. No way. This reminds me of Mitt Romney. And again, I can't stress this enough. Barack Obama knew it was bullshit. David Axelrod knew it was bullshit. And they made the Republican voter and Fox News tricked them, made them think that they feared Mitt Romney, not Rick Santorum. Now, rewind the clock. Look at Rick Santorum. He was a blue-collar Republican who, in fact, had the better shot of winning Ohio, of winning Pennsylvania, where he was from. Romney got within 4 points. You think Santorum would not have done better than Mitt Romney against Barack Obama in the state of Pennsylvania? The polls didn't suggest that. The polls suggested Santorum was going to get crushed. This is the same thing that is happening right now. I cannot stress that enough. All right? And you can't get that kind of white vote without a huge turnout among the white working class. You think Nikki Haley is going to get that kind of margin and turnout with the white working class? No way. You can already actually see in the likely voter top line, you can actually see don't know refused and not going to vote. If these are the choices, you can see it's twice as many as Trump v. Biden. What does that mean? Lower turnout. And people in Team Haley and Team DeSantis want you to believe lower turnout's good and they can win with lower turnout. Bullshit. The lower turnout will be on the Republican side, and Democrats will still harvest enough votes to get Joe Biden over the finish line. Folks, mark my words. And 600 responses in each state is not a lot. Nikki Haley does better with educated voters who take surveys on the phone. When you poll huge states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and you get 600 votes, that's 600 responses. Now, in Nevada, that's not bad. But in some of these other states, no way. In order to get an accurate exit poll, there's like 3,000. Right. Love the Drake. It's the least surprising thing ever because the New York Times is a warmongering news outlet. They beat the war drums for Iraq, weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, pushed the Ukraine-Russian war. They absolutely would love Nikki Haley. Absolutely. But I'm telling you, they're going to find out Nikki Haley is a warmonger and they will stick with Joe Biden. They will stick with any Democrat for that matter. They are not electing Nikki Haley. Not without Donald Trump having some kind of like agreement where he helps this woman every chance. I just don't even believe it. I don't believe it. It's right. J32356 on locals. It's bullshit. They don't know who she is. And that's it. They're kind of generically picking it. But generic means nothing. Elections aren't between generic candidates. They're between candidates. And that's how it goes. So let's quickly talk real fast about why I want to do Iowa. I did see somebody, really only one person, unhappy about the idea of polling Iowa. But I think you really need to appreciate the fact that we already polled nationally without the national project being totally funded. All right. And And we were leaving the rest of that to the Rust Belt poll. All right. So this is not even, it's a much smaller state. It's much easier to poll. And we're kind of on the ticking clock to do it. There's no point to wait around to see if one of the other ones get funded in time because the clock we're up against that's ticking in order to use this remaining budget is we're never going to fund those other projects in time. It's just not going to happen. They've been so slow. It would take a remarkable surge. And just to give you an idea, let's go to it right now and see where we're at. It would take a remarkable surge that we just have not seen yet. And like I said, yeah, the Peach State poll isn't even 1/4 funded yet. And the Rust Belt poll, which is the national, to the left, I'm going to show you now. Like I said, the national poll we did already before it was funded. It was less than 40% funded. And we did it just to do it. Oh, don't forget to like. Always like, folks. Oh, and like I said, when you do guys give, look, there's a lot of comments not on there. Give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Thank you, anonymous. Thank you. Appreciate it. I like reading your comments. So you can make yourself anonymous, but see the comment still shows up. So nobody knows who it is. So if you want to see something that you just don't want people to know it's you, that's okay. All right. So it's on bigdatapoll.com for those of you who are new here, watching for the first time, don't know. It's on bigdatapoll.com. Go check it out. And you'll see it right in the menu, the hamburger menu. You can slide it out right here when you're on the front page, and you'll see public polling projects right there. And there's a dashboard, folks. Whoops, I hit it. There's a dashboard that will give you your well, that's your hub. And then this, if you want receipts or something like that, this is your donation history. All right. So you can apply, I believe you can apply which one, if you do a reoccurring or something like that, you can apply general fund or whatever it is. And that general fund always rolls into the national. All right. So if you want to do that, I know there are a lot of people who are doing reoccurring and they're going to old funds. Don't forget to choose the general fund because that rolls to the next national poll. All right. Yeah, and I was enlightening to gauge the evangelical sentiment, but it really is to me about whether or not, and I'll show you right now. This is generally the questionnaire we've built so far for it. How much time do I have left? Not a lot of time, because I do want to bust chops about the API. Can you be persuaded still? Where's that at, guys? Has that changed? Oops, that's not on there. Yeah, has that changed? And then evangelicals, will they be persuaded at all by this endorsement? How does this impact your vote? I've seen polls, one that's independent, and then I've seen the impact of two candidates in the race. I've not seen Nikki Haley's polling, but I've seen pollsters from Trump and DeSantis world. It does not move the needle. Okay. It hasn't in that. Maybe it will this time, and maybe we'll see. But what appears to me to be much more obvious is that ever since Kim Reynolds started to openly campaign against Donald Trump and for Ron DeSantis, her image has taken a huge hit. A huge hit. And, as Eric is saying in the chat right now, I mean, people have known that she has supported DeSantis now. It was like Steve Deese pretending his endorsement was going to make a difference. Everyone already knew Steve Deese endorsed Ron DeSantis. Same thing with Bob Vanderplatz. The guy had been trashing Trump and advocating and appearing with DeSantis for months. And then he's pretending like his endorsement came out of nowhere and is going to have this huge impact. People need to stop pretending or thinking, maybe not even pretending, but people need to stop thinking voters are dumb. They're not dumb. They know. They already know. That's why Kim Reynolds' approval has taken a shit. All right. 2 p.m. Let's move on with that. I do want to see if I can get some last minute API stuff in. If it's not, listen, I told the book club and I'll tell everybody, if it's not working the way I want it to work, we still will have something different because the maps are different. The graphics are different. They're much cooler. You're not going to see the website. It's just the map that'll be on the screen. Very detailed, obviously, by county, but it's also branded very much like us. And there's a whole lot of other stuff. I wonder if I could show you this, so they'd be pissed if I showed everyone this. But there's more information that we have available. Estimated votes on the low end, estimated votes on the high end, estimated votes in the middle. What is the difference in the absentee ballot vote versus the election day vote? All right, so there's a lot more stuff. And we have built a ton of much, much better graphics that eventually really was for the 2024 election. That's why they made like that. And we had to kind of customize them for some of this off-cycle general election stuff to test it, just to play around with it and show you guys how cool it's going to be. We're at a point where, seriously, once we get this right, there would be, and that's why I don't want to release some of it and like something go wrong. I just want to do it when it's right. There is no reason for anybody to watch Fox News ever again by the time we're done here doing what we want to do. They cannot compete with the level of analysis that we're going to be able to provide. And hopefully so much of that will just be in front of your face on the screen almost at all times, cycling through. And then we'll hit them in segments. You know, as polls close, we're going to structure different segments to talk about the most up-to-date information as all of this other stuff is cycling through on the screen for you to see on your own. There will be no purpose to watch cable news or network news on election night. We will have the best show, hands down, not even close. There is so much other, I didn't even get in, I just brought up the difference in some of the vote stuff we were just talking about, but it is much more than that, so I want to do it when it's right, not half-ass it. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to boogie, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget, 6 p.m. I was thinking about a Megyn Kelly thing. 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Kentucky will close right away. We're going to try to start a little bit early, but be there by 6. All right? With that in mind, again, Public Polling Project, links in the description. It's getting cold out there. Check out the merch. The hoodies are the bomb. They're so comfortable. They're so cozy. That's the reason why we kept doing them the way we do them. But the People's Pundit merch is there for apparel. My pick, the Pundit's pick, is the hoodie. It's super cozy. All right. So again, I don't think I'm missing anything, any announcements. If there is, I'll keep you posted. I'll keep you on the locals and on the truth feed and etc. if I'm missing anything, but I don't think I am. All right. Stay cool. See you tomorrow night. Nothing but love for you. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. Oh, don't forget to like the video right now. Smash the like button. And if you are watching on a channel you have not yet subscribed to, do not forget to subscribe to that channel. If you're on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble and give us a subscription. Subscribe over there as well. I very much would appreciate it. But of course, the best place to follow us and like the videos, watch the videos, is on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. Very special thanks to my guest, very special guest, Devin Nunes. Go check him out at Devin Nunes on Truth, where you can find me as well at People's Pundit. Hope to have him back on soon. Great, just great insight. Great stuff. All right, guys, we will see you soon. Again, do not miss it. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see how it goes. Time to get out of this vest, I'll tell you that much. Time to get in the numbers, get out of the vest.